You're listening to The White Rock Reporter, brought to you by Oli's Restaurant, White Rock Wellness Center, and DiscoverySeaTours.ca. And now, The White Rock Reporter, Johan Sandstrom.
I'm the White Rock Reporter, and I'm in the field and sitting in a beautiful place called Esquire. And you can hear from the background that, well, isn't this wonderful? That's the way it is when you are doing interviews out in the field and meeting with people that are really interesting to meet with and talk to. So I'd like to say welcome to Shelia Muxlow. Am I correct in spelling? Everything is okay?
Yes, yep.
Oh, that's great. Sheila, tell us a little about the subject here. Will obviously be, you wrote a press release that dealt with the great Canadian water grab, and it entailed the fact that Nestle, well, you can tell it yourself, they are extracting water and not paying for it in Hope, British Columbia. I wonder if you can present yourself, your background a little. You are not one of those, shall we say, you are not really a professional agitator for campaign-driven, I could probably say, militant person. You feel that this is just an injustice when it comes to the water, because today we are going to talk about the water and how important it is, why it should be a community property. It should be the water to the people, for the people, and it definitely shouldn't be a commodity. We don't want to see it as a commodity and a trading thing. That's not what it's all about. It's a natural resource. And you get a little agitated here when it comes to Hope and the company. And give us a little information about that. And then we are going to go back and touch a little on your background, why you feel you are qualified to say this and do that and so on. Please go ahead.
Sure, yeah. So thank you, Johan, for inviting me here today to share about this issue. So I'm from Chilliwack, BC, which is a neighboring community to Hope, BC, and I work with a community organization there called the Water Wealth Project. And what we are concerned about is that there is essentially a failure of protection when it comes to water in this province, and that we are at risk, seeing that we have multinational corporations like Nestle who are able to come in and drain our groundwater without any sort of licensing program, without any sort of monitoring, regulation, or having to provide any sort of revenue to the communities that are directly impacted by their operations.
For a host like myself and being a broadcaster and having the opportunity of reaching out to thousands of people, the audience I speak of that I do have on the show, it certainly is great to be able to have this information going out by way of you, because before this program has spoken a little about coal, and we don't talk about coal and coal trains, which for some people and most people is a very viable thing. Now, regarding the water, I felt that you have been to the university, you have background, you're coming from an established family, you have siblings and so on. So you said you came from Chilliwack.
Yeah, I was born and raised in Chilliwack, BC. My family they are settlers here. My Dutch on my mom's side and English and Irish on my dad's side.
And Muxlow, Muxlow.
Yep.
Sheila, first name. Everyone can spell for that, hopefully. It's interesting when people will Google you. They will find out who is this person. They can do that, and they can also go to this so-called. What was the name of the website here?
The Water Wealth Project.
The Water Wealth Project.com. So how old is that organization?
So we just started that last March. So brand new organization. Yeah.
I'm not laughing. It's not funny. It's very, very, just shows an initiative here. It's a serious issue.
It is, and it's something that we did feel was important. When it comes to water advocacy in this province, there has been a lot of work put into research, science, the policy level, lobbying to try to bring about changes, but there is a gap when it comes to community engagement work. And so our project has been based primarily on that, directly engaging with people who live in a community, call the place home, and wanting to try to get them engaged in the conversation about seeing their water protected.
Your line of study here was very conducive to good communication. What was the line? You mentioned that a few things, your major, whatever you did.
Oh yeah, so my background, I went to school at the University of Ottawa. I took international development and globalization studies. At that time, I was quite concerned with the human rights violations and the environmental devastation that was happening outside of Canada.
Did you have one of those funny hats on too?
I got to wear one of those funny hats. Yeah.
Yeah, well, that's wonderful.
And. Yeah, no, but it was really through that education that I was able to take a more critical look at what was happening here in my home country, in Canada.
Right.
And it was through that I, started to see that we have some major problems here in this country, but particularly in this province, when it comes to how the natural resources are managed. Not the least of which, of course, is the lack of respect for First Nations rights and title, Aboriginal rights and title.
Right.
But then also other local residents who call this place home, we don't have adequate protection to make sure the beautiful water, the forest, the land are protected.
We take very much for granted in life as Canadian citizens, and I can say that as well, since I happen to have a dual citizenship with Sweden and Canada. Let me tell you, though, that unfortunately we do take a lot of things for granted. We don't seem to tend to our store and understanding really the implications of not taking care of resources. And I'm a little flabbergasted when because I wasn't that aware of it until I read the article in the local paper in Vancouver, the province, and then I understand here on the internet and your website, this is a big issue. This must be a big issue, not just because water is a life essential thing, whether that is contaminated, clean, or whatever, but it is just water, and we need it to survive, to live. And we can, in essence, 70, 80, 90 hours of water. That's not a normal way of having the intake of fresh drinking water. And babies need water. Several times over a day, and all that stuff. So, but just the fact that we don't seem to have, water is not regulated in Canada. Is that correct?
Well, it's regulated differently in different provinces, but in BC, surface water, there is a licensing process that people have to go through to access surface water for different industrial activity. Groundwater, completely nothing. There's total absence.
Yeah, because groundwater, that is the ore which brings the water to us, right? That's way.
Yeah.
Do we know any meters down deep, or what do they consider groundwater to be groundwater? Do we know that?
I would.
Are you technical?
I'm not. I'm not that technical, but I would. Common sense would denote that anything under the ground, is considered groundwater. And the way that it works here in the province, if somebody wants to drill a well, they can do so, and if they start to get water out of that well, that's theirs. They don't have to tell anyone about it. They don't have to monitor the impacts of how much, what draining that water could do to other people's water sources. It's completely a free-for-all. And it's based off of legislation that was crafted in 1909. It's more than a century old, 104 years old. It has not been updated, and yet it continues to govern how people can access groundwater.
When I read the expressions, and I say this for the benefit of the listener, the audience, when I read your eyes and your face and your empathy and everything in your face, talking about these issues, you are very energized and you really want to make this is the main thing for you too, right?
Well, and like you said, it's
you
so
want to make
important.
Is this your flag? In other words, protect. In other words, start immediately. This is a question that I personally, and I do have to have an opinion as well, And I think that this is nothing to be complacent about. This is nothing to be what I consider procrastinating about. This is a thing that should be grabbed up by the provincial people here in BC. Christy Clark, I mean, is that the person? I guess so. I don't know.
Well,
she could make it an issue for her own campaign.
Yeah.
I do say that, there need to be things done. And that's what you want. You want things to be done. You want the regulation come to it. And this is not about bylaws and things like that. This is a very, very... It's just wrong to give away water to a multinational, multi-billion-dollar corporation that is publicly traded, that has interests all over the globe, and also in South America, in Scandinavia, in Europe, and so on. So here, imagine what they can get. They get at least this water sells basically in average, and I've done some research myself. $2 for a bottle of water. You go up to any store here, and they have all these funny. I mean, there's almost as many types or brands of water as it is yogurts in the store now. And don't get me going on yogurts because I just hit my lid.
Oh no.
I've tried to start yogurt, and this is my own story. way back when I came here in 1988, and I was told that we don't have any milk. And I just stared and I said, wow, really? No, it's a milk quota, it's a marketing board. Oh, then I understood that I wasn't too far away from Sweden after all when I left Sweden in 88. Because I came to the same type of society with the same type of general householding thing. We got to keep that this way, and bureaucracy and limitations. So tell me a little about this. What is the reaction with the natives now? I'm concerned about the Aboriginals.
Yeah, well, it is. It's concerning because the BC government has granted Nestle access to this water resource without any accountability to the Chihuahua First Nation or the Union Bar First Nation, both members of the Stalo, whose traditional territory it is. And because in BC we don't have treaties, there is this glaring absence, again, of a recognition of Aboriginal rights and title within the laws that govern natural resources in the province. And
sorry for interrupting you, Shelia Muxlow. We need to take a break here.
Okay.
We'll be right back.
More from the White Rock Reporter coming up after we hear from our sponsors.
Enjoy adventures where eagles soar, whales play, and around the next corner is a soft pebble beach. Discovery Sea Tours, specializing in private charters and group tours. Visit discoveryseatours.ca for details.
Time now to hear some more from the White Rock Reporter. Here's Johan Sandstrom.
Yes, we are right back here again. And we were saying about the natives, about the Aboriginals, their rights and their desires and so on. Would you like to conclude that little passage about where they stand and where they like to go?
Yeah, so of course I can't speak for First Nations themselves, but I can emphasize that it has been this glaring absence in the way that natural resources in general are managed in this province to ensure that First Nations are at the table and are part of the decision-making process. And when it comes to Nestle, they're essentially draining the size of a small lake every year. And this is on territory that the Chihuahua and the Union Bar First Nation have lived on for generations, arguably time immemorial. And this water withdrawal...
Nestle has done this for 30 years?
Nestle has been doing their operations for 13 years. Yeah, so they started in 2000.
Yeah.
Before them, there was another bottled water company called Aberfoyle, based out of Ontario, that was working as well. But the issue with First Nations has been, again, that there are impacts to their territory from operations like Nestle, and Nestle is only one, of many industries that is accessing groundwater.
In British Columbia,
yes,
there's numerous companies that they just drill.
They just
and extract the water out of wells.
Right, and they're not accountable to anybody. They're not accountable to First Nations. They're not accountable to other residents in BC. They're not accountable to the BC government. They can just go in, access that groundwater, take it for free.
But they need to check it with Fraser Health, right?
That is if you are a water service provider. So yes, if you so for municipalities, for example, that is. Chilliwack actually just came under a recent chlorination order, which is a big concern for people. But it was Fraser Health who mandated that we needed to add chlorine to the water.
Did you ever do that?
Chilliwack did go in that direction. Unfortunately, there are still people who are very concerned with that process. It seems to be there's a lot of dishonesty as well around how things came together in that regard, and people do want, they have questions. Why do we need to add this chemical to what before was?
I mean, there are so many safety guard switches, I call it, when it comes to monitoring flowing water and so on. So I think that overdoing it, we know that many people suffer distinctly from chlorinated water. Mm-hmm. We also know that in the long perspective, it hardens the arteries. That's a medical fact. Science tells us that. And there are so many other things. So obviously Nestle likes what they get. Non-chlorinated water.
Yes.
They can sell it by the bottle for about, they probably get $1, $1.20 or whatever per liter. And then they have the markup, and then they have a great product that they brand and they sell it and everything else.
Well,
they don't give anything then to the natives or.
No, as of right now, to my knowledge, there is no agreements between Nestle and the Chihuahua First Nation or the Union Bar First Nation.
Because the natives or the Aboriginals, they cannot enforce it. Even if they wanted to, there's no. It's a lawless.
There is
process. It's a lawless process.
Yes.
Did everyone hear that? I like that. It was a well-founded word. Yeah. Because this is, in a way, supernatural British Columbia, and we are the Wild West, but it shouldn't be the way it is. What is your first step that you would like to do? Right now,
we want to see an overhaul of the BC Water Act. So, as I mentioned,
is that the BC Water Act that we talk about?
Yeah, the BC Water Act. It's a piece of legislation. It was crafted in 1909.
Yeah.
104 years old. It needs to be brought into the 21st century.
Yeah, but look at me. I'm fine. No, what I like to say, without being too funny, what I like to say, though, is that there must be a step before that general legislature. In other words, it should be a mandatory, just basically a stop. She's operating this operation. This is something that is taking. That thing is made in Victoria. Isn't that it?
That I don't think you're alone in thinking that should happen. For me, I personally don't know if that's a decision I get to make, but it should be something that happens on a local level, right? So, Chihuahua, Union Bar, the residents of Hope, right? They should be empowered with the right to say if Nestle should keep going or not.
Right.
And right now they're not. Right now the decisions get made in Victoria, totally removed from the people who are directly impacted. So that needs to happen. You're very right that there needs to be a conversation on a local level, authority granted on the local level to say yes or no to whether or not this industry should be allowed to keep going. I mean, that said, Nestle does provide jobs.
What kind of torches can you put a fire here to really put some fire under the whatever?
Well, I mean, I guess the reality is like you said, water is life. Water is essential to our well-being. There's no replacement for water. We run out, that's it. No replacement. Can't Coca-Cola doesn't work.
With my experience, my limited experience of media, I'm quite sure someone's going to say, "Hey, Johan, there is replacement for water."
Oh, goodness.
There are all those people that are not only illiterate on the subject, but they're also optimistic, and they believe that this is, wait a minute, they'll find out something.
Yeah, perhaps that I think is a little delusional on their part, right?
Yeah, exactly.
where you know, I think it is good sense to realize
that's a limited. Yeah,
it's good sense to realize that water is not something that's easily replaced. It's essential for life, and right now the fact that we don't have adequate protection for it. On a groundwater level, and then also on a surface water level. If I could speak a little bit to how water's managed surfacely.
Please do.
So the way that it's distributed is on a first in time, first in right process, which essentially is akin to, if you get somewhere first and you claim access to water, you have priority.
Yeah.
And so if there was a drought, issues of contamination, some sort of a water shortage in BC, we don't have any guarantees that water will be allocated for human rights first. We don't have any guarantees that water will be allocated to make sure ecosystem health is functioning. What we do have assurances for is the mining companies, the bottled water companies, other industries who have water licenses.
Right.
If their water licenses are dated earlier than, say, a municipality of today, then they would be guaranteed water first.
Right.
So it's not based on priority of use, it's based on who got there first. And that's a major problem with this Water Act that needs to be overhauled. We need to have guarantees that in any times of water shortages, water gets allocated for human rights, for ecological needs, and then industry's profits. Industry's profits should not be first. And then another major issue with where the Water Act is at is this lack of science and expertise on a local level. So we essentially are lacking with an understanding of how our watersheds work because there hasn't been adequate resources.
Sheila, let me put it this way. I think that you mentioned that you had a background temporarily or whatever in Alberta.
Mm-hmm.
Don't you see that there is a risk for the groundwater to be contaminated in a much bigger area than just Alberta?
Oh, absolutely. And it's really sad right now what's happening with fracking up in northern BC.
Right.
Because those
you are busy. The smartphone is
buzzing away there.
For your attention.
But yes, we do. There are concerns about groundwater contamination in this province, and again, it's a problem because we have a complete absence of groundwater regulation. That we don't know what's happening with industries like fracking that's extracting groundwater, injecting chemicals into the ground to release natural gas. There's no science, no expertise that are resourced on the ground to really understand what's happening.
The scary part, is, this is a conversation. We have a conversation on a number of issues here, and we have touched on many of them, actually, more than I thought from the beginning of this interview. But we talk about fracking, and I understand, I read in the Global Mail here recently that water is now being replaced by chemicals.
Yeah.
And that was projected in the article as that would be the solution, and that would take away any kind of question that people are raising regarding fracking. And I think it's a la-la land, dream thing, right? Because even if you do inject into the soil, into the groundwater areas, the water table, if you inject chemicals, how do we know and how do we don't know? Is it good or is it bad and what's going to happen? Because we are actually, is basically the way we handle chemicals versus in this case, the groundwater and the water table.
Right.
It seems to be a legitimate rape on nature.
Right.
And that irritates me personally. I shouldn't be so worried though, as you know what the point is, but I'm thinking of grandchildren, children in general, and that's why I think it's so important.
Yeah.
And that's basically why you and I are having this conversation, which we are going to give another 4 minutes, and then I'm going to give you the opportunity to close the bag of this conversation that we are having here with hopefully fairly good sound quality. because Esquire have good coffee. We can say that. We're going to take a break here, so we'll be right back.
More from the White Rock Reporter coming up after we hear from our sponsors.
Enjoy adventures where eagles soar, whales play, and around the next corner is a soft pebble beach. Discovery Sea Tours, specializing in private charters and group tours. Visit discoveryseatours.ca for details.
Time now to hear some more from the White Rock Reporter. Here's Johan Sandstrom.
Yes, we are back here, and I'm speaking to Shelia Muxlow out of in British Columbia and Abbotsford, Chilliwack. You have been many places, and it is great, but you are focused now on what's going on with the water coming out of Hope. And we are talking about Nestle, the company, the multinational, and you like to say a few conclusive words here, and that is, it may be cryptic, but if necessary, we can come back to in another program and follow up on this thing. I think that would be fair to do that for the audience. So don't feel that you're left out in the sand or without water. So go ahead.
Yeah, so Nestle's operation really is, a microcosm of a larger problem in BC. When it comes to industry being able to access groundwater for free without any sort of regulation, no licenses, no science or monitoring required. And really, it's a problem that needs to be addressed. There seems to be a bit of a deficiency in good sense when it comes to how water is managed in this province. And, we know water isn't something that just stays in one place. And so when issues of, how groundwater is used, risks of contamination with operations like fracking, that's not something that's going to stay isolated to one region. It will permeate throughout the ground system.
Fracking and fracking.
Fracking, fracking, just as an example, and an example of why we need to have regulation on how groundwater is used or not used, to make sure that it's protected and make sure that it doesn't contaminate other water sources, to make sure our grandchildren, our children and our grandchildren have some water to look forward to in their lives.
It's a health issue. It's definitely is prevention. We just need to get up and go here and get things adjusted from a legal point of view, and just for the sake, for the reasons that you have brought forward in the program here, and which you have written about, and so on. Before we end, let me ask you: you have been already interviewed by a number of media. This is great information, I guess. It's a popular thing to talk about.
It's been great to see the interest. People I think are starting to realize that, wow, what a shock. I can't believe it's the 21st century and, we have a Water Act from 1909. That again, there's an absence of groundwater regulation at all. But on top of that, as I mentioned before, there's broader failures where water is not protected as a human right in BC. Water is not protected. Nope, it is not protected as an ecosystem need. That lakes and rivers and streams need a certain amount of water to make sure that they stay alive, that the ecosystem is functioning. That's not protected right now, the way that our water law works.
I'm such a naive guy that, despite my beautiful age, that I thought the fishermen took care of that. Either the anglers, and everything that they would involve and make sure things are good and the way it should be. They obviously are not doing that.
And they don't have the power to, and that again is part of the problem. The power about decision making when it comes to how water is used is either in Victoria or it's in Ottawa. It's not in the local communities where people are directly impacted. So that's a big thing that we are pushing for at the Water Wealth Project, is to see local control over water. People who are most directly impacted should be part of the decision making process.
And that is something I can tell you. The good news is that we have a good council in White Rock with a mayor that I believe in unison action endorsed and written and said, hey, we want our water to be the property of the community. And that's strong words. But it echoes just what you said. That's the way it should be.
It needs to go in that direction.
It should not be exploited by any corporation.
No.
Not even remotely with liaisons and things like that. Nothing.
No.
Because all of a sudden then you will find that it becomes a commodity and it's like a runaway train.
Yeah, and we cannot afford for that to happen. There needs to be, though, the involvement of First Nations, as I know you understand and appreciate.
Indian band or Semiamo Indian for Aboriginals, lovely people. I heard, and they are into the loop now. They are part of the discussions within White Rock. But White Rock it used to be a district of Surrey, right? Ward 7, whatever, and they talk about the amalgamation and, but it is a little nice, quaint little summer resort that is doing its best to function and so on. So, so
yes.
With that as a sign off, and you had some website here, or you wanted to do something?
If anyone would like more information, please check out our website. We're at www.waterwealthproject.com. Or otherwise, feel free to be in touch with me. You can get me at Sheila at waterwealthproject.com. Again, living here in the Valley, the volunteers and the staff who do work at our project are all from the Valley as well. We want to keep things local, and we do believe that there is power to be had when people start to pay attention to this issue and are going to, help us to keep it visible, keep the pressure on the decision makers to make sure they follow through.
There are many things that are coming up and popping up to the ground here. In other words, we have an international airport very close by.
Right.
That is something second in the province or something like that. International traffic and backup for Vancouver Airport. And that's, I'm talking about the airport, the international airport in Abbotsford. So it's a great area. And hopefully there will be some volunteers that will contact you. And that's about it. And I say thank you very much, Shelia Muxlow, for talking to me about this now. And I wish you good luck in your endeavor and the whole organization and so on.
And thank you, Johan, for having us on the air today.
Most welcome. Thank you.
Thanks for listening to White Rock Reporter, brought to you by Oli's Restaurant, White Rock Wellness Center, and DiscoverySeaTours.ca. To learn more about the White Rock Reporter and to get access to more great episodes, visit whiterockreporter.com. That's www.whiterockreporter.com.